Chapter 2. Joan's Flame. Ethan didn't know when he would fall through time again, but he knew one thing: it always happened when he least expected it. This time, he was sitting in history class, watching the raindrops tap against the window. The teacher was talking about the 100 Years' War and the French heroine who inspired an army to turn the tide of battle. Joan of Arc. The name sounded familiar, but he wasn't fully paying attention. As he sat there, listening to the teacher's steady, quiet voice recounting the story of this heroine, Ethan felt himself drifting into sleep. And then, total darkness. If you enjoyed Ethan's adventures, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps the journey going and gives me the motivation to share more epic stories. In the heart of battle, Ethan tried to move, but fear and chaos paralyzed him. Hooves pounded against the muddy ground, arrows whizzed through the air, and the clash of swords and battle cries filled the space around him. Joan grabbed his arm and pushed him toward a soldier. "Take him to the rear! He can't stay here!" The soldier, bearded, his face covered in mud, dragged him toward the back lines. But before they got far, the ground shook with the thunderous explosion of cannon fire. Horses reared, soldiers fell, Ethan crashed into the mud, sweat and dirt clinging to his face. From the chaos of wounded and confused men, he saw them English soldiers, their red crosses gleaming in the dim battlefield light. They were close. Too close. Joan shouted commands, raising her banner high, sword in hand, charging forward. Ethan couldn't look away. Something inside him shifted. He didn't know how or why, but he felt Ive couldn't just stand there and watch. Instinctively, he grabbed a discarded sword beside him. It was heavy, too heavy for his grip, but he tightened his fingers around the hilt and pushed himself up. An English soldier lunged at him, his face twisted with anger, raising his axe. Ethan flinched, stepping back, but instead of running, he stepped forward at the last second and swung. His strike was clumsy, but just enough to deflect the first blow. He was alive. "Fight, boy, or fall beneath their steel!" someone shouted nearby. Ethan turned to see an older soldier, a scar across his face, shoving a small shield into his hands. "If you're here, then fight!" The battle was chaos. Weapons clashed, horses stumbled, the cries of the wounded filled the air. Ethan held the sword a soldier had forced into his hands, though he had no idea how to use it. Joan was at the heart of the fight. She didn't hesitate, didn't falter. She didn't kill, but she led her men, lifting their spirits with every movement. Ethan realized she wasn't just a warrior, she was a symbol, a flame burning brighter than any sword. The attack slowed. Ethan fell to his knees, exhausted, gasping for breath. Then he felt a gentle touch on his hair. He looked up, and there she was, Joan of Arc. She smiled, wiping the mud from his cheek. Her voice was kind as she said, "You were brave. Where did you learn to fight like that?" For a moment he almost said, "At the Battle of Thermopylae Boot." He bit his tongue. Better not to explain. She wouldn't believe him. He stood up and simply said, "I was only defending myself." Part 3. Fire and Faith. As the French celebrated their victory and pushed forward, something was wrong. The English archers raised their bows, aiming straight at Joan. Ethan didn't know why, but he ran. "Look out!" he shouted with all his strength. Joan flinched at the last moment. The arrow that could have pierced her heart instead grazed her shoulder, cutting deep through her armor. She dropped to her knees, pain twisting her face. Ethan was beside her before he even realized he had moved. "Hold on, you have to hold on," he said, gripping the arrow shaft. Her eyes, full of pain, met his. But there was no time to hesitate. He took a deep breath and pulled. The arrow came free in one swift motion. Blood streamed down her armor, but she didn't scream. Joan clenched her jaw, leaned on him, and stood up. She raised her banner high above her head. Blood still dripped from her wound, but her voice rang out stronger than ever. "Forward! Strike harder! I have seen Saint Catherine, Saint Margaret, and Saint Michael. They are with us. Victory is ours!" The French soldiers, emboldened by her words, roared into battle, their war cries echoing through the misty field. Ethan wanted to follow them, but suddenly his vision blurred. The sound of trumpets and clashing swords began to fade. A blink later, the light grew sharper, the air calmer. He was back in the classroom. "Ethan, are you with us?" the teacher's voice called. Chapter 4: Truth and Legend. Ethan's eyes snapped open. His heart was still racing, but this time not with fear. With joy. He had saved Joan of Arc. Looking around, he realized he was back in the classroom. The rain still tapped against the window, and everything was just as it had been before he traveled through time. "All right, let's continue," the teacher said, picking up a piece of chalk. As we said, in 1429, Joan of Arc led the French army to a great victory at Orléans. But her story does not end there. Ethan raised his head and spoke. "They say she was beautiful. Even in men's clothing and armor, her face radiated something divine. Witnesses said she had fair skin and piercing eyes. Her presence inspired hope among her soldiers and struck fear into her enemies." Ethan could still picture her, the brave girl he had just seen, standing with her banner raised, bloodied but unyielding. "Well said, Ethan." After her victory at Orléans, the teacher continued, she led several more successful battles. The French people adored her, and even those who doubted her had to acknowledge her extraordinary charisma. But her enemies did not remain idle. Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't know what was coming next. In 1430, she was captured by the Burgundians, who sold her to the English, the teacher said. Though she was a hero of France, she was left to the mercy of her enemies.